Hello, my name is Tara Jean Hickman from the LaGuardia and Wagner Archives, and I recently decided to do an investigation of a somewhat obscure and paradoxical story of the Cadman Plaza Towers. This is an urban renewal project that took place in the middle of Brooklyn Heights. But this is not your run-of-the-mill housing project. I had Dr. Stephen Levine tell me about this new and redefined renewal project.
What we're looking at here is we're looking at what Mayor Wagner in his speech when they started construction called the New Look Urban Renewal, because they started moving away from the Tower and Gardens cut off from the neighborhood urban renewal, and they started trying to integrate or try to integrate the urban renewal into the rest of the neighborhood. Some of what they're doing here is they're pulling the towers back into the street, because as we walk along here, you can see we have the Ristini supermarket,
which is all part of the complex.
Which is all part of the complex,
and connected.
Right. So they're trying to, connect up the project. If you look at earlier urban renewal, you weren't going to see a supermarket in there. And then another aspect of it is in front of us, which is that they built townhouses here, so that there would be street frontage for these townhouses, so that rather than having a pulled back tower, you have people living on the street.
In addition to the stores and townhouses, there is the Pineapple Walk, a pedestrian mall between the two towers. All of these are attempts to mimic the housing and aesthetic of the heights surrounding it.
And what was supposed to be here originally was one long tower building that would have taken up almost the entire urban renewal site.
Oh, I see. The whole plot.
The whole super block would have just been that one large building, more or less. And it was going to be mostly studios and one bedrooms, and the people living in the community wanted families moving into the neighborhood.
Well, sure. I mean, that was one of the first things I noticed when you step off the train in Brooklyn Heights is, families and strollers and, sort of private brownstones. And here we are. I understand originally that's exactly what they didn't want to go here. So,
Right.
I can understand why the community wouldn't want that.
And the other aspect of it was that it would have been an all-luxury complex. So it would have all been for upper middle income or higher income people to live here.
Right.
And the community pushed to have more middle income housing put in here, so that the housing that was eventually built here was 60% middle income and 40% luxury.
However, I didn't understand how they could build a project with 40% luxury housing, studio spaces, and one bedrooms, yet expect families to dominate the residences. What was it that held together this compromise?
What's happening in Brooklyn Heights is you're seeing an influx, and you can see this happening in other parts of New York City, of young people who are wanting to put roots down here.
Definitely.
And, a similar phenomena were happening on the Upper West Side of Manhattan or in Park Slope, these old Victorian neighborhoods. And they're wanting to put roots down. They're wanting to have good schools in their neighborhoods. So they want to have families here to build those communities.
I met one of these young professionals, Dr. Steve Lieberstein, and asked him about his experience moving into and living in the Cadman Plaza Towers.
My wife and I moved into this building in May of 1973. We were among the first residents who got here. We'd been living in Crown Heights, which had just recently been renamed by the real estate people as Prospect Lefferts Manor. But we were in one of the older apartment buildings, which was beginning to deteriorate. Looked like the landlord was going to let it get much worse. And we both worked in Manhattan, saw this project going up, and they were looking for people to apply. It was kind of unusual reasons for that. That had to do with a fog of corruption surrounding the then developer. But anyway, we were lucky. We just met the income qualifications to move here, so we were able to come to a neighborhood which we knew a little bit because we had a bunch of friends who lived here, and the fact that this was the city's first historic district kind of was attractive to us.
However, there were still class distinctions that were bugging me.
If the city at this particular time is really trying to fix their mistakes from earlier urban renewal projects. Are, ethnically speaking, are blacks and Puerto Ricans, after this is built, moving in? I mean, if we're trying to fix this problem of displacement and slums, and we're going to take your neighborhood and build, 40, 60 half luxury.
I would argue that a black middle class or a Hispanic middle class does move in here.
Okay.
That if you look at it, and I was trying that the towers are probably this urban renewal is more diverse than the rest of Brooklyn Heights is today.
Oh, so it really is reformed urban renewal.
But it's also you're probably all, but who gets displaced and who moves in? It's not the same group necessarily when you're talking about middle income urban renewal.
Sure.
When you build public housing, it's possible for people who are being displaced from slums to move into public housing.
So what groups was it that occupied these towers?
Housing was at least economically integrated, and over the years it became more racially integrated as well. I think when we moved in, probably the vast majority of the tenants here were white. I can't give you the exact numbers, but as the years went on, and some of the earlier tenants, some of them were retirees who were moving back to the city because they saw this was an affordable place. As they began to move out or to die off, and new people came in, the building became more mixed.
Tentatively, it seemed to me that for the people living in the towers, this project had worked.
So, Cadman Plaza urban renewal. You think it worked?
I think it works. I don't know if it worked exactly as everyone wanted it to.
Everyone meaning the Brooklyn Heights.
Brooklyn Heights, the people who designed the urban renewal.
Right.
I mean, I don't think putting these buildings on platforms, like the one behind us is on a kind of like raised up from the street, was a good idea because I think it cuts it off. On the other hand, I think these townhouses are nice. And I think what it did, though, is it did create a lot of new, good quality housing. So if you're thinking in terms of let's get rid of substandard, deteriorating housing, and let's put in new modern housing and create a lot of new housing that people generally like, then on that level it worked. And I think some of the aspects of that reformed urban renewal was successful. I think, the Pineapple Walk is nice. Having the Verstiti supermarket as part of the development, I think, worked well.
And I think these townhouses worked as well, architecturally speaking, as compared to other urban renewal developments.
This was a terrific place to raise a family. So we were, ironically, the beneficiaries of an urban renewal project that I probably would have been opposed to, had I been one of the original working class residents of this area who were undoubtedly displaced by the urban renewal project, but I wasn't.
But the question still remains about the integration of the towers and the people inside into the community. Any architectural feat or urban planning blueprint means nothing without the effect. So we want to hear your stories and theories of how this project, an urban renewal project, no matter how reformed, practically works in 2011. How is the community built around and inside of this project? Does it work? Please send us your stories to the LaGuardia and Wagner archives following the link posted below, so as to record the real history of this scheme to create affordable housing for middle-income residents and plant it in the center of an upscale neighborhood, now one of the wealthiest in New York City.